Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Today I'm going to make a full shirt mandala. I'm going to start off by centering the shirt, and this process is going to go really fast, but down below in the description for this video, I have a link to another video which shows how to center a shirt. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm getting both halves of the front of the shirt right up next to each other, and both halves of the back of the shirt right up next to each other. Therefore, whenever I apply the dye to the shirt, both halves of the front of the shirt are going to look just about the same. You're not going to see one side of the front of the shirt a lot darker than the other side of the front of the shirt. Same thing with the back of the shirt. Now that the shirt is centered, I'm going to use a washable marker and make a mark where I'd like for the center of my mandala to be. This shirt is a woman's V-neck shirt. So unfortunately, the center of my mandala is not going to be very far below the point of the V-neck. I usually like to put the centers of my mandala not very far below the armpits of the shirt. If you put them down too low, it kind of looks like your mandala is bursting out of your stomach region, which is not a bad look. It just depends on the look you're going for. I placed a straight edge on that line and folded the hem of the shirt up. I think adding the straight edge into the shirt makes it a little bit easier to get a clean fold. Then I folded that hem part way down, kind of like I was doing an airplane fold, pinched the seam, and lifted the shirt up off of the table, folding the top of the shirt down as well. Now I'm going to fold each side of the shirt one more time. This makes an 8-point mandala fold. Since I'm going to place my hemostats the entire length of the shirt, I want to make sure I try to keep all of the wrinkles out of the shirt as much as possible. This is a Woman Within brand shirt, so the fabric on it is a little bit different than a Gildan Ultra Cotton. It seems to be a little bit softer and maybe a little thinner. It is 100% cotton though. I'm going to start by placing one curved hemostat at an angle down at the end, or what is going to be the center of the mandala. Then from there, I'm going to place curved hemostats, and I'm going to start by placing the curve facing up. And I'm going to alternate adding hemostats to each side, and I'm not taking them the entire width of the shirt. But I am going to place the hemostats right up next to the hemostat in front of it. So if you want to experiment with hemostats, if you place your hemostats with the curve going up or curve going down, it kind of changes the angle or the way the little petal looks on the flowerish portion of the hemostat. I am using curved hemostats for this design, but you can also use straight hemostats. And I have coated my hemostats with heat shrink tubing. I do that because I think it gives kind of a tighter grip on the fabric for one thing. And the second thing is the teeth of the hemostats don't damage the fabric. You have to kind of watch and not rip your fabric because those teeth are really grippy. I just buy heat shrink tubing at Lowe's or Home Depot. I've purchased it from both places, and it's usually in the electrical department. I have various sizes, and I just slide a piece of that heat shrink tubing over the teeth and then use a heat gun to shrink it down to fit. If there's any excess left hanging over the end of the hemostat, I just cut that off with a pair of scissors. By the way, the hemostats that I'm using on this shirt are 10-inch and 12-inch hemostats. I have them sorted by sizes over to the side. I start with the 10-inch hemostats, and when the shirt gets too thick and I can't use that size anymore, I switch over and start using 12-inch. I personally haven't really found a lot of designs on t-shirts where I do both, hemostat on the front of the shirt and the back of the shirt that work very well for sizes smaller than 10-inch. Now, if I'm doing something like, like a tea towel or a child's t-shirt, or I'm only adding the hemostats on the front portion of the shirt, so I only really have, one major layer of fabric I'm messing with, then I can use smaller hemostats. But for the most part, I really don't use anything smaller than 10-inch hemostats. So when I got to the portion of the shirt where it was too wide to add one hemostat, I went ahead and started adding two, and I would kind of make them meet in the middle. For this part, I left the hemostats with the curve facing up as well. One of them, it looks like I only have one hemostat. That's because I used white heat shrink tubing on one pair of my hemostats. That one always kind of tricks your eye when you're looking at the shirt. So once I had all the hemostats on the shirt, I went ahead and placed this aside to allow it to dry out. I like to dye thick designs like this when they're completely dry. I get better color saturation in the middle, and if you've ever looked at a hemostat mandala shirt or any kind of mandala shirt, and you see big streaks of white in the middle of the mandala, more than likely that shirt was dyed while it was still damp, and it didn't get good color saturation down in the middle of all of those folds. If you'd like a little bit more information about this, I have a tie-dye blog out on my website which discusses this topic in a little bit more detail, and I have a link to my website down below this video in the description. I had a viewer suggest that I wrap rubber bands around the handles of the hemostats so that they don't pop off the shirt if they happen to come unclamped. I tried that a few times and it worked great. So that's what I'm doing, is I'm taking some small rubber bands and wrapping them around the handles of the hemostats. That way, if they do happen to unclamp, they're not going to go flying all the way across the room. So my vision for this shirt was blues and teal or turquoisey type colors. I decided to dye it outside because it is such a long fold. I wanted it to be able to lay flat. So because it is also completely dry, I'm going to use some soda ash solution that I've placed inside of a squirt bottle to spray it down so that the dye sticks to the top better. So the goal is on one side of the shirt where you see that there are sections formed, I'm going to place blue colors, and on the other side, I'm going to place kind of the more tealy turquoise colors. However, right off the bat, I messed up. So I put Undertow from Delula Company right down at the very end, or what's going to be the center portion of the mandala. Then I placed Lapis from Dharma Trading Company in the first section. But here's where I went wrong. I placed Royal Blue from Dharma Trading Company in the next section. I thought I would be really organized and place all of my blues in one container, plastic wash bin that I could pull from, and all of my turquoisey colors in another one, and then I could just do one side of the shirt and come back and do the other side. Well, I just went on autopilot and I just kept pulling from the same container, so I had to pull out my other container and use out of both of them. So after I did the royal blue, I did Caribbean blue from Custom Colors. Then I went back to the sky blue from Dharma, followed by Viridian blue from Grateful Dyes, followed by sapphire blue from Pro Chemical and Dye, aquamarine from Pro Chemical and Dye, cornflower from Dharma. And cornflower is a special order color. You can still purchase it from Dharma, but you have to buy a really large quantity of it. Otherwise, you can usually find it out on a tie-dye group on Facebook called Tie-Dye Supplies Marketplace. People out there purchase them in the large quantities and then they repackage them down into smaller quantities. I've left a link to that Facebook group down below this video in the description. Then I used teal blue from Dye Spin. Then for the next 4 sections, which go the full width of the shirt, I used Brilliant Blue from Dharma, followed by Seafoam from Custom Colors, Denim Borealis from Dharma, and Denim Borealis is another one of the special colors, except it was a muck dye color, so that one is actually no longer available. That one was one that was offered in late summer, early fall of 2024. So that is sold out. But you can just substitute any kind of a blue because that's what I used in one of the blue sections. Then the last color is Bahama Blue from Dharma Trading Company. Now I'm going to add a little bit of additional dry soda ash over the top of the dye. The shirt's already been soaked in a soda ash solution, but for me this is just kind of a little insurance policy because I'm going to add quite a few large chunks of ice and force a lot of liquid or water down through the shirt. I want to make sure that all of that ice and water that goes through the shirt doesn't rinse out the original soda ash that I soaked the shirt in. This dye really needs that raised pH in order to bond properly with the fabric. I'm going to start by adding some larger chunks of ice onto the shirt. These I've made in food prep containers, some ranch dip containers, just any kind of plastic container that I can find that I can fill with water and freeze. By using these instead of bagged ice, it helps keep me from having to make an ice barrier around my shirt. That's another reason why I'm doing this design outside, is I can be a little bit more liberal with my ice. I don't have to be as concerned about making a mess inside. To fill in some of the gaps, I'm going to use some larger ice cubes that I've made in a silicone ice mold. I've included some process photos so you can see how the ice melted. And after this first layer of ice melted, I came back and I had quite a bit of undissolved dye left sitting on top, so I added another layer of ice. The only other ice that I had available in my refrigerator or in my freezer at the time was longer pieces of ice that I use when I do incline dyes and some of the other big ice chunks. I didn't have any bagged ice. I really would have preferred to use bagged ice because I really didn't need a whole lot more ice added to the shirt. After the ice melted, I went ahead and placed the shirt down inside of a plastic container with a lid and placed the container inside my garage where it was nice and warm. It's October here and it's been like in the 80s, low 90s during the day, but it's getting a little bit below 70 at night. So I wanted to keep the shirt where it was someplace warm while it processed. After about 48 hours, I took it to my utility sink and I began rinsing it in cold water to rinse out the soda ash. I warmed the water up to hot to rinse out the excess dye that didn't bond with the fabric, took the hemostats off the shirt, and continued rinsing in hot water for just a little while before soaking the shirt to get out the rest of the excess dye. To do that, I placed some really hot water in my utility sink, added a little bit of Blue Dawn dish soap to the water, placed the shirt inside the hot water, and allowed it to soak. When the water cooled off, I changed it out and I continued that soaking process until my water was remaining almost clear. Then I put the shirt along with some Dharma's professional textile detergent into my washing machine and I washed it using a hot water cycle. Okay, so I've washed, dried, and ironed the shirt and let's see what it looks like. Okay, so what do you guys think? So I think this one turned out pretty. It's not quite as bright and vibrant as I was expecting, but I think that's because I added way too much ice. So I put the ice on this one, got busy, got distracted, and went about my business. When I added the second layer of ice, I intended to not leave it as long, but like I said, I got busy, distracted, and I let the second layer of ice almost totally completely melt, which was too much ice. So the colors are a little bit more muted or watered down than I was expecting, but I still think they're really pretty. And I like the design going the full shirt. I mean, I like it going all the way to the edge. I think that looks cool. As far as the colors go, I really like the more turquoisey teal colors mixed with the blues. I think they're really pretty. I also like all the purple and pink splits that have come out of some of the colors. So I guess for the most part, I think the shirt ended up really pretty. The color right in the middle, the undertow, I didn't get a lot of the color splits. I got a lot more of the darker shades from that color, but normally I either try to put a different color right in the center or a color that's going to kind of draw your eye right there. And I think this one does really well to do that because it is darker. So I like that. And then even though I messed up and I added two blues next to each other in that center-ish kind of portion of the mandala, I don't think it's super noticeable unless you're looking for it. So I'm pretty pleased about that. I also really like the softness of this shirt. I know I was going for a more vivid look, but I really don't mind the softer feel to it. I do think it's really pretty. I think though, because of adding too much ice, up at the very top of the shirt, it almost gets a little bit more watercolorish. That's the portion of the shirt that was in the center. Even though when you look at the shirt, either on the front of the shirt or on the back of the shirt, both sides of the shirt look like both halves of the front of the shirt and both halves of the back of the shirt look the same, there is a difference in where I applied the dye. So the dye is a little bit darker at the bottom portion of the shirt, which is the part of the shirt that was on the outside where the dye was applied. The top of the shirt was what was on the inside folds, and that is a little bit softer and more watercolor looking. I also think the design looks really pretty on this shirt, even though the shirt is a V-neck. You know, there's not quite as much of the mandala on the front portion of the shirt. At least you can't see as much of it, just simply because, you know, part of the fabric is not there because of the V-neck. This shirt has also got actual seams going down the side, but thankfully the woman within shirts, I've never had any kind of an issue with them twisting. I have had a lot of issues with like Bella canvas shirts and some of the other shirts where they place side seams with the seams twisting or the front of the shirt not lining up with the back of the shirt because of that. And so in general, I try to stay away from shirts that have side seams. And for some reason, they want to put side seams in most of the women's designs. It's got to be something to do with the cut for a lady's shirt, but thankfully, this shirt did really well, and I didn't have any issues lining it up properly. So lastly, if you're wondering about that more chartreuse color of green that you're seeing in the shirt, that is coming out of Custom Colors Seafoam. And I wasn't really expecting that color. I've used Seafoam quite a bit, and I love that color. I think it's a really pretty Custom Colors color. But that one was kind of unexpected for me. I am used to the bluish color that's coming out of Seafoam, but I wasn't really expecting the green. So, like I said, I really like the shirt, but what do you guys think? Please drop me some comments down below and let me know. And if you've enjoyed watching the video, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it and if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you'll hit the bell, you'll receive a notification whenever I upload a new video. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.